All right, let's dive into this, shall we? Daredevil. We're talking Daredevil, born again on Disney Plus Bunner. And look, you came to the right place. We've got articles, reviews, wikis, you name it, all to get you prepped for this. Now, this isn't a reboot or anything. We're picking up right where the Netflix show left off.
Yeah, I've got to say, they really nailed the tone. This is dark, gritty, very much in line with that original series that everyone loved. And picking up after the events of that show, I think, adds a layer of mystery, especially for those who've been following Daredevil's journey so far.
Totally. And hey, speaking of familiar, we're not messing around with recasts or anything here. Charlie Cox, he's back as Matt Murdock, our Daredevil. But something's different. It feels like right off the bat they decided to, shake things up a little.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the death of Foggy Nelson, that's huge.
Yeah.
It immediately sets the stage for something darker, more intense, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And it's not just any death, it's Bullseye. He's behind it all, which adds a whole other layer of tragedy to Matt's story.
Wow, okay, that's heavy. No wonder they call it Born Again. It's like he's starting from scratch almost. So how does Daredevil even begin to deal with that kind of loss?
Well, that's what this series explores, and it does it really well. I mean, we see Matt step back from being Daredevil completely. For a whole year, he's grappling with guilt, with grief. It forces him to look at everything he's done, everything Daredevil has done, and question if it's all been worth it.
A whole year. Man, that's not the Daredevil we know. Shows you how deeply this affects him. But, while he's trying to figure things out, it seems like his old nemesis is doing pretty well for himself.
Yeah, you could say that. Vincent D'Onofrio, he's back as Wilson Fisk. But get this, he's the mayor of New York City now. That adds a whole new dimension to their relationship, wouldn't you agree?
Wait, Kingpin is the mayor? You've got to be kidding me. That's like peak irony, right? Daredevil's out there fighting for justice, and the guy pulling the strings is running the city. Talk about tension.
You got it. This isn't just a personal feud anymore. It's Daredevil versus the system itself. The soul of Hell's Kitchen is at stake here, and it's playing out on a political stage. Makes you think about power, about corruption, doesn't it?
It's like the city itself is another enemy for him to face. And speaking of enemies, we've got some newcomers too. Hector Ayala, a.k.a. White Tiger. He's making his MCU debut here.
And that's a big deal. First Latino superhero in Marvel Comics, and now he's here. What's really interesting is how they introduce him, though. It's a case of mistaken identity, you see, and it pushes him towards this life of vigilantism.
So, wrong place, wrong time, and suddenly he's fighting for justice outside the law, and guess who steps up to defend him? Matt Murdock, of course. I can already see a mentor-mentee thing starting to form there. But it's not all new heroes in politics. We've got villains to talk about, and some pretty intense ones at that.
Oh yeah, buckle up. Bullseye is back, played by Wilson Bethel, and he's even more unhinged than before. Seriously, the guy's accuracy is terrifying. You never know what he's going to do next. And then there's this new villain, Muse.
Muse, huh? Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more about this Muse character.
Well, let's just say he's a serial killer, but not your run-of-the-mill kind. He's an artist, and his medium is, well, his victim's blood. Talk about adding a dark twist to things.
Hold on, he paints with blood. Okay, this is getting seriously creepy. How does Daredevil even deal with a villain like that?
That's what's so interesting. Muse really gets inside Daredevil's head.
Yeah.
He messes with his senses, with his perception. It's a psychological battle unlike anything he's faced before.
Yeah.
Really makes you question what is good, what is evil.
So we've got Daredevil dealing with grief, Kingpin running the city, a new vigilante trained to find his place, and a blood-painting serial killer on the loose. Sounds like Born Again is living up to its name, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. They've taken the Daredevil we know and love and thrown him into this whole new world with new challenges and new enemies. And you know what? It works. It's fresh. It's exciting.
But with all these changes, how are people reacting? Are the critics on board?
For the most part, yeah. It's sitting at a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. People are loving the performances, especially Cox and D'Onofrio. They bring that same energy and depth that made the original series so good.
It's good to hear. It sounds like they've captured the essence of Daredevil while adding these new layers, this new complexity.
There have been some complaints about the pacing, though. Some folks think the early episodes are a little slow, but it feels like they're taking their time, setting things up, building that tension.
Well, it's not a simple story, right? There's a lot of emotional baggage to unpack. You can't just rush through that.
Exactly. And Marvel's already greenlit a second season, so they've got a bigger plan in mind. They're in it for the long haul.
So we've got our hero dealing with loss, a villain who's become the system itself, a new vigilante stepping into the ring, and a terrifying new enemy who, let's face it, is just plain creepy. Sounds like Born Again is setting up something truly epic.
Oh, without a doubt, this is just the beginning, the foundation for something much bigger. And I, for one, can't wait to see where it goes.
So we've talked about all the new faces and the changes to the world of Daredevil. But I want to get back to Matt Murdock. A year off. Foggy gone. How is he handling all of this?
I think the show really captures the weight of it all.
Well,
It's not just about Daredevil, the superhero, but Matt Murdock, the man underneath. You see his vulnerability, the struggle with grief and guilt, all the things that come with that kind of loss. And let's be honest, the life he's chosen.
yeah, it's almost like he's got, I don't know, PTSD or something. That trauma of losing Foggy on top of everything he's already been through. It's a lot to process.
It is. And the series really dives into that.
Yeah.
Matt's psyche, the mental and emotional toll it takes to be a vigilante, to constantly face darkness and then be hit with a loss like that. It really shakes him.
And it's not just Foggy's death, right? It's everything.
Yeah.
All those years fighting criminals, the constant danger, the choices he's had to make. It all seems to be coming back to haunt him now.
Exactly. Born Again makes you consider the price of that life, even for someone like Daredevil.
Yeah.
The violence, the emotional burden. It's heavy stuff.
And then you have Kingpin, but not just any Kingpin. Now he's the mayor. How does that change the game for Daredevil?
It's such a smart move, I think. It raises the stakes completely. Daredevil's not just fighting street thugs anymore. He's facing a system that's become rotten from the inside. It's like, how do you fight for justice when the people in power are the problem?
Feels like classic David and Goliath, but like 10 times more intense. And I think that's where Daredevil really shines, right? He's always been about fighting for the underdog, for those who don't have a voice.
Oh, totally. And now his background as a lawyer, his understanding of the law, it all becomes even more crucial. He can't just punch his way out of this one. He needs to be smarter, more strategic. He's a symbol of hope, especially when the city itself seems to be losing its way.
It's not just brute force anymore. It's about exposing the truth, about using the system against itself. But look, this is still Daredevil we're talking about. I'm assuming there's still plenty of action, right? What are the fight scenes like in Born Again?
Oh, they don't disappoint. The action is as brutal and realistic as ever, but there's a difference, a rawness to it this time. It reflects Matt's state of mind.
Yeah.
Like every punch has extra weight behind it.
So it's not just mindless fighting. It's driven by something deeper, by the characters' emotions, their struggles, their desire for justice, for revenge, for something.
Yeah, the choreography is amazing, but it's the context that really makes it work. You see Daredevil's rage, his grief, his determination. It all comes out in those fights.
Okay, let's shift gears for a minute. We talked about White Tiger and Muse earlier. How do they fit into all of this? What role do they play in this whole Daredevil puzzle?
Well, White Tiger, he brings that fresh perspective on vigilantism I mentioned. He's young, idealistic, maybe even a bit naive. His journey is all about figuring out what justice means, especially when you're operating outside the law.
It's almost like seeing a younger version of Daredevil, you know? All that passion, that drive to make a difference, but still figuring things out. A great way to bring in a new generation to the Daredevil world, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And then you have Muse. Talk about unsettling, the way he's introduced his whole art thing. It's just creepy, man. But it also pushes Daredevil in a way we haven't seen before. It's a psychological attack, a battle of wills.
He's like a walking nightmare, isn't he? His art, if you can even call it that, it reflects this twisted view of the world. Makes you wonder about the dark side of creativity, you know? What happens when someone that disturbed has talent?
And Muse is smart. He understands how Daredevil's senses work, how to use them against him. That creates a unique kind of fear, a different kind of danger for Daredevil.
Definitely a battle of wits, as much as physical strength. And given where Matt's at mentally, emotionally, Muse is a huge threat, not just to his body, but to his mind.
Exactly. He makes Daredevil question his own sanity, his perception of reality. And that's terrifying, especially for someone who relies on his senses so much.
So, hero fighting his inner demons, villain who's now the system itself, a new generation of heroes and villains. Sounds like Born Again is living up to the hype. What's the overall consensus? What are people saying?
It's mostly positive. But, as I said before, some people have issues with the pacing. It takes its time, that's for sure. but I think that works in its favor.
Yeah, it's not your typical action fest. There's a lot of depth here, emotional complexity. You need time for that to breathe.
Totally agree. And remember, this is just the first season. It's a multi-season arc, so they're clearly setting the stage for something much bigger.
And with the second season already greenlit, fans know they're in for the long haul. This is just the start of Daredevil's born-again journey.
Exactly. They've planted the seeds for a story that could explore everything. Heroism, justice, what it means to be human, all of it.
Okay, welcome back to our deep dive. We've hit the plot, the characters, all the action, but now it's time to get into, I think, what really makes this show tick. The themes. Born Again isn't just about Daredevil beating up bad guys. This one goes deeper. We're talking loss, redemption, and what justice even means when the world feels so broken.
Yeah, and what I really appreciate is how they bake these themes into every part of the story. It's not just background noise, you know. It's at the heart of what Matt Murdock's going through. He's not just battling villains, he's battling himself, his own soul.
Right, and the city, New York, it's like it mirrors Matt's internal state. Kingpin as mayor, this whole Muse situation, even White Tiger trying to figure out where he belongs.
Yeah.
It all ties back to this idea of a broken system, and not just legally, morally, too.
And that's where losing Foggy hits so hard, right? It's not just grief, it's a crisis of faith for Matt. If Daredevil is this symbol of hope, but everyone he cares about ends up getting hurt, what's the point of it all?
That's a massive weight on his shoulders, and he can't just shut off the lawyer part of his brain either. How does the show balance those two sides of him, Matt Murdock the lawyer and Daredevil the vigilante?
Oh, that's one of the best parts. Born Again doesn't shy away from the gray areas. Is Matt doing the right thing? Are his methods actually just? Is he becoming part of the problem? He's wrestling with those questions constantly.
And it's got to be even harder now with Kingpin in charge. It's like the whole system is rigged. How do you fight for justice when the guy defining what justice even is the one you're trying to take down?
That's the core dilemma. And it goes beyond superheroes. It's a question for all of us, right? What do we believe about right and wrong? When do the ends justify the means? It's making us think.
And it's not just the writing that's doing the work. Visually, there's some really cool stuff happening. The use of shadows, the way they frame Daredevil, almost trapped. You can tell it's all very deliberate.
Oh yeah, the cinematography is beautiful. The shadows, they represent the secrets, the corruption hiding beneath the surface.
Yeah.
And the way they shoot Daredevil, yeah, it's like the weight of everything is closing in on him. You can feel it.
Like the city itself is another character pushing down on him, reflecting his own struggle.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, can anyone, even a guy without fear, actually change things in a world this messed up?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Can Daredevil make a difference? And the show doesn't give you an easy answer, but it makes you ask the question. It challenges what you think about heroes, about justice.
So we've got a hero battling his own darkness, a villain who eyes the system, and a whole lot of moral gray areas to navigate. Where does all this leave Daredevil in the grand scheme of the MCU? What's his future?
Well, I think it's pretty clear Born Again is building towards something much bigger. White Tiger entering the scene, the focus on Matt's mental state, the whole political thriller vibe with Kingpin.
Yeah.
This feels like the start of something huge.
Yeah, like they're setting him up to be a major player in the MCU, maybe even leading his own team, a group of street-level heroes or something like that. And with Season 2 confirmed, who knows what they'll do?
The possibilities are endless, right? Crossovers with Punisher, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, a whole interconnected world of heroes, all dealing with the grittier side of things.
Now that's something I'd love to see. And honestly, Daredevil deserves it. He's one of the most interesting, complex characters Marvel has, and Born Again proves he can stand with the best of them.
So, to sum it all up, Daredevil, Born Again, it's more than just a superhero show. It's a psychological drama, a look at justice and morality, and visually, it's stunning.
It makes you think, it sticks with you long after you're done watching, and leaves you wanting more. And for you listening out there, here's something to consider. If Daredevil is that symbol of hope, what happens when even hope starts to lose its way?
Wow, that's a big one. And that's exactly what Born Again is trying to explore.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, stay safe out there, and remember, justice might be blind, but it always finds a way.